Sports with Sean Carter-Villas.
Well, Marcel Kittel won his second stage of the Tour de France as Chris Froome retained his yellow jersey. Here's BBC 5 Live with a roundup of stage 6.
The Tour de France.
At the Tour de France, I'm OJ Borge. Today's location, where we're coming to you from, is the fabulous Jean Josselin Champagne House in Guise-sur-Seine. Now, there's a couple of reasons why we've chosen this location. To start off with, it's actually on the route of tomorrow's stage, about 40 kilometres into the race, as it goes along the banks of the Seine. And secondly, we're in Champagne country. Go to a champagne house. We have to do that. We're actually in the Caveau, the wine cellar, currently surrounded by 150,000 bottles of champagne, all fermenting, which is what happens when you sit next to Rob House. Isn't that right, Simon Brotherton?
Well, a little bit of sediment gathering, but I'm doing okay, I think. This is stunning, by the way, this setting. You've excelled. You've outperformed yourself today, bringing us here.
It's great. Looking around the walls, we can see bottles of champagne all over the place. Behind me, if you look down, there's room after room, and it goes on. We've been down there. So many bottles of champagne, and it's really cool after what's been a hot day.
Really hot day. I have to say, it's a major relief to come and sit down here in lovely, cool conditions. It was a scorcher today for the cyclists out on the road, as well as in the commentary box. But you're talking 36, 37 degrees. That was probably the hardest thing about today. It wasn't a particularly tough route. Quite a long day, 216 kilometres. What you would describe as rolling flat, I think, where there's nothing of any great difficulty, but you still need to keep tapping away at the pedals. But yeah, really hot for the cyclists.
How much do the riders hate days like this? That are long, it's hot, there's nothing really happening.
They are difficult days. You look at the route profile, and it's pretty much pan flat, like you say, just rolling up and down, undulating a little bit, and you think, oh well, it's easy because there's no great climbs. But the problem is there's no descents either. So you are literally on a treadmill, and there are very few occasions in the day where you can just sit up and kind of coast down the hill and get your breath back. So it can be difficult. And with the heat, grippy roads, the tar was melting underneath the riders in places, and it's just heavy going. Quite
a good test for the commentary team as well, because we came on air with about 95 kilometres still remaining, 3 riders in the lead, only by a couple of minutes. You knew that they weren't going to win. There was no suspense there. You knew it was going to come down to a sprint, so there wasn't very much going on, but we had to keep it going. We found a way.
You didn't play rock, paper, scissors from what I heard.
Indeed.
What you were doing today. Now, if you're watching this as well, and you can watch these as they go out on the 5 Live Sport Facebook page, you'll see in front of us there are 3 glasses of fizzy liquid. Before you write to points of view, that is de l'eau gazeuse. Possibly. Now, as I was saying, sprint stages, they can be long, they can be slow, they can be boring. That is until the sprinters team decide to wind it up.
With less than 400 metres to go, Greipel's teammates finished his job, and now Edvald Boasson-Hagen finds himself on the front very early here as De Maar makes a move on the outside, tries to squeeze in on the barriers. There's not a lot of room here. Boasson-Hagen is beaten by De Maar. De Maar comes past him. It's De Maar against Greipel, and Kittel now finds a turn of pace at just the right time to take it on the line. Superbly judged by Marcel Kittel, who takes the second stage win in this year's Tour de France, and he timed that to perfection. He didn't show his face at the front or anywhere near it until the closing meters, and a disappointed look on the face of Andre Greipel, and no surprise, Greipel and De Maar were fighting it out, and then Kittel just swept past the pair of them to take the victory. Kittel wins again his second stage win in this year's Tour.
Indeed, he takes his second stage win. Now, this was the first sprint since the unfortunate incident which sent 2 of the biggest stars of this race home for different reasons. Did they sprint differently today, Rob Hales?
No. Not at all. Absolutely not. I almost missed Kittel take the win because I was too busy looking on the left-hand side of our monitor at the green jersey of De Maar, squeezing up the inside. Edvald Boasson-Hagen, teammate of Mark Cavendish, was there, left barely enough room, and De Maar just squeezed his way up. There was a Katusha rider as well. His arms were flailing in the air. What are you doing? And fortunately, they all stayed upright. And then it was only at the last minute when Simon actually mentioned that Kittel, and I looked across on the monitor and saw that he was coming up so quick.
Did you have the same thought as me, though, Rob? At one point, when most of the sprinters were on the right-hand side of the road, as you say, De Maar found himself on the front. Greipel was pushing hard. Bouhanni was in there behind him. For a split second, I thought, are we going to have a similar crash against the same barriers? There wasn't a lot of room there, was there?
It was almost a replay. In fact, there was a little shot there, a photo that we were seeing, and it was almost a replica of the other day, that head-on shot where we saw Cavendish leaning in just before he hit the barriers and Sagan there, and it was almost the same with Demar just coming through. It was just the jerseys were different.
But what it did do, OJ, it meant that the route was clear for Marcel Kittel. If he had the speed in his legs, it was a clear run to the finishing line, and he timed that sprint beautifully. I mean, on the evidence of what we've seen so far, if they're all upright and they're all in a sprint, elbow to elbow, at the moment, he's the class of the field. Demar's not far behind him, but Greipel, the look on Greipel's face when he crossed the line again today, he knows at the moment he hasn't quite got the legs to beat Kittel.
Well, Andre Greipel actually was talking about the atmosphere in the bunch, what it was like to be sprinting today.
We are doing. We are not playing in the sand here. We are going for stage victory, so we have to fight for it. We have to fight for positions, even with respect to each other. And I think it looked quite safe. I didn't see, of course, the images, but I think without touching any spectators, I didn't touch riders, so I'm just happy I did my sprint. I get beaten. It's okay.
We're not playing in the sand, he says, and that's true, isn't it? There might have been that crash, there might have been one rider sent home, there might have been a rider who broken his collarbone, Mark Cavendish, but they are here to sprint, whatever the stage, whatever's happened before.
Well, absolutely. I mean, when you think of the speed that they're travelling at in a sprint like this and the number of split-second decisions that they have to make, you think of the number of cyclists that are on the road. There's not that much room out there on the road. It is inevitable that there is an element of physicality about it. You know, there is an element of danger, and you're not going to take that away from sprinting. But, of course, the riders do need to have some respect for each other, but yeah, they were already going for it. It didn't affect the way the sprint played out today, I don't think, what had happened 2 days before.
I mean, it's very difficult as well, you know, without going back over what happened a couple of days ago. The riders, they're not getting the same view as us, the viewers, you know, the overhead shot where we can see pretty much everything that's happening and the manoeuvres that one rider makes, and that effect, that kind of domino effect that happens 3 or 4 riders later, which is unfortunately what happened with Cavendish and Sagan the other day. As a rider, you're just looking down at your front wheel. You know that there's a rider kind of alongside you. You can feel them. You don't know who it is. You don't know how fast they're coming. And it's only at the last minute that you know whether you've either got it, you've done it, you've had the speed to get across the line first, or if you're just getting missed out.
Now, they are in the Tour de France bubble, but they would have seen the shots of the crash that happened between Peter Sagan and Mark Cavendish.
Several times,
Yeah,
yes.
They would have seen it. If they'd been on social media, they can't have stayed away from it. Would that not have gone through their heads at all? If you're a rider and you've seen that happen, does that not...
They're in a race. They're in a bike race.
If you think about that, then you've lost already.
Yeah, you are done. If you have to think about it, then it's too late. And so when they're sprinting like that, they are just getting on with their day-to-day job. And, you know, fortunately, they all got across the line today. You know, it was a very unfortunate accident that happened the other day. It does happen, not very often, fortunately, but when it does, the ramifications can be huge, as we saw.
And hanging in there on the coattails of the riders right at the front in that sprint. Best result for Dan McClay so far in this year's Tour, finishing in 8th place. British rider, races for the small French team, Fortunéo. He did manage 3rd on a stage last year in the Tour. He seems to be finding his sprinting legs now and have a few more chances between here and Paris to get a little bit further up in those sprints. And who knows, if it works out for him, maybe he could snag a stage win. He's a little way short of that at the moment, though.
It's great hearing about Dan McClay, because he was a real revelation of last year's Tour de France. We talked a lot about Mark Cavendish and how many stages he took, getting close to Eddie Merckx's record of 34 stages. 34. Yeah. But Dan McClay was there or thereabouts, and he doesn't have the big lead-out train. He doesn't have the pedigree of Mark Cavendish. He's a lot younger. He doesn't have that support network around him, but he is a real star.
It's the pathway to good sprinters is to do it off your own back, surf off everybody else. You know, when Mark Cavendish was first pro, he didn't have a lead-out train. You know, very few, if any, do. That it's something that comes later on in your career. So, you know, Dan McClay is a rider who gets himself up near the front. He'll have teammates to put him up there in the final couple of kilometres, and then it's pretty much up to him to surf off everybody else, try and fight for the wheel. It just means that you've got to work a little bit harder earlier on in your sprint. But so for a rider like that to come through, as Simon said, I think he had 3 top 10s last year, and just missed out on he got himself on the podium, missed out on a win last year. So he is a rider who, when he's in form, we know he can sprint. He's had several victories in smaller races. Grand Prix d'Annan last year, I think, was probably his biggest, and an incredible sprint that he had. Working his way through the field, it kind of all just opened up. We had a great overhead shot of it. It's on YouTube or. He
has to just muscle his way onto a good back wheel, doesn't he? When
he does.
Clearly there are other riders that won't want him to be in that position, but if he can find the right wheel to follow, and then if he's got the kick, who knows? He may better that third place.
He's a sort of rider in a year or two we may very well see on a different team, or have a team built around him for the lead out.
Is he good enough to have a team built around him?
At the moment, no. But he's a sort of rider who, give him another season or two. This is his second tour, quite possibly.
Now, a man who does have a whole team built around him is Marcel Kittel. I was looking at a tweet earlier on. It came from Le Tour data, and they obviously put out his top speed. 71.17 kilometres an hour. That was the fastest he was going, about 90 metres out from the line. That's ridiculously fast.
Drive down the road at that speed, 70 kilometres an hour, wind the window down, stick your head out, and that's, that's the kind of feeling that you will have. And then imagine yourself going down basically wearing your underwear. That's what happened, unfortunately, to some of the guys the other day. That's why it hurts when you go down. And that is why riders don't want to be falling off or knocking each other off.
And do that outside your house. Rob will pay your speeding ticket.
Yeah. Don't try it in a 30 zone.
So getting your
that's quick.
Head out the window at 70 kilometres an hour.
But that is quick. It's flat. It's not going downhill, with a descent, with a howling tailwind. This is on the flat. Human-powered vehicles.
I went for a little bimble today on my bike. I saw you running as well, Simon Brotherton, a lovely jog up a hill. And I actually went down the other side of the hill. Now, I was out there, and I was pedalling as hard as I could. I could only get up to nigh on 60 kilometres an hour. I mean, how long can they hold that speed for? Because that is a phenomenal speed. Obviously, they're coming off a wheel.
Yeah, that would be a peak speed. So that kind of speed, you're just dipping into that, and then it would kind of level off. But that's at the end of 216 kilometres. They've already done. They've done around about, by the end of today's stage, around 24 hours. So almost a day of racing in the saddle, and we're only at stage 6 already.
It's been a brutal tour so far. Now, Marcel Kittel was speaking to Gemma about how it made him feel to win his second stage of this year's Tour de France.
Yeah, it makes me very proud. I think it was a very nice day, a very nice victory today. And I'm incredibly happy that I could get this victory for the team today, because Julien Vermoet especially really worked very, very hard today to get the breakaway back. I think it was a really hard day for him with all the heat and a long time in front. So this team spirit here in our team is incredible, and I'm sure the cold champagne tonight will taste very good.
Now, being a sprinter is all about being the biggest dog. Is he the biggest dog left in the race, do you think?
I think he is. He's the most experienced, because it's not just... obviously we were all very impressed with those numbers about how fast he went. Whether he was purely the fastest at any point in that sprint, I don't know. Maybe Arnaud Démare went a little bit quicker than him, but it's about everything. It's about bringing it all together, timing your effort to perfection, finding the speed at precisely the right moment to launch your effort. And that's exactly what he did. As Rob said earlier, we didn't see Kittel at the front. We knew he was in that front group, but he was nowhere near the front of that group in the sprint. For example, Dimension Data, they put Edvald Boasson Hagen at the front, but they left him there way too early. There was no chance of him to win that sprint. I mean, I know he's not, on the top of his sprinting form these days, but even so, he was at the front. He had no chance of getting a place with about 400 metres to go. Kittel just waited and waited and waited, timed it to perfection. It was a superb ride. But that's why I think he's the best, because he has that experience and he has that speed. Greipel, similarly, with the results that he's had in recent years, of those who are still in the race. Of course, we're not talking about Mark Cavendish at the moment, for example.
That's a lot of the reason, I think, as well, why you see after a sprint, you see guys banging their handlebar, those who haven't won, because they know that they probably had a win in them, but it's just about that timing. And, you know, if they're not delivered in the right position by their teammates at the right time, really
That's
right
key, isn't
time, it's crucial. If you wait, you just think, right, I'll go now. And you can see sometimes riders coming up so quick. Michael Matthews the other day, coming up so quick, but just running out of road. That's frustrating. And that's one of the great things about it. It doesn't matter what you do. Only one of you can cross the line.
And it's a mixture as well, isn't it? It's a mixture of your team putting you in the right place at the right time, but also having the patience and the confidence to wait.
That's a lot of it.
Because you can see the line in front of you. The temptation is to say, I'm going to go for it now. But of course, if you go that fraction too early, you'll be overtaken.
Patience is crucial.
So it's a game of sprinting chicken, isn't it? How long can you wait to go for it? Because last year, Mark Cavendish,
yes, absolutely.
Mark Cavendish took a couple of stages by the width of a tyre. I mean, it was that tight.
Yeah, and if you get it wrong, you know, it's so easy to go the other way, but that's part of it. You know, there is sometimes a little bit of luck involved. Obviously, you make your own luck, but generally the sprinters who win the most stages, they've got the power, but they also know what they're doing. And that's one of the things. Dan McClay, for instance, he's got the speed, he's got the power, he's not that far off. But he just needs to learn his trade a little bit, get the timing right, and then if and when he's given a lead-out train, it kind of all comes together, and the chances are we'll see him up near the front a lot more often.
It'd be great to see if that does happen. Just a quick mention of Arnaud Démare, the man who stays in the green jersey for the best sprinter, the best who's got the most points. There was a couple of tweets I saw on social media afterwards saying that he might have been a little bit dangerous in that sprint, and there was also people
he was the other day,
who were suggesting that he might have started the whole domino effect that brought Mark Cavendish down. Was that the same today?
No, a little bit different. He basically the other day he went from the middle of the road across to the right and back to the middle, whereas today he got himself caught up on the inside against the barriers and didn't back off. If they want to put lines down the road from 200 metres out and say, right, once you're in your line, if you cross it, like in track and field, then that's kind of the only way to do it.
But he's the one out of all of them, do you not think, who's really upped his game and gone up another level? He's still quite a young rider. He won the French Championship shortly before the Tour de France. We've seen that he has a lot of ability before. For example, back in 2013, the very first edition of the Prudential Ride London Surrey Classic, he won that. He hasn't won a stage of the Tour de France until this year, but in terms of his consistent performance, he really has come on in leaps and bounds.
And his consistency is showing here at the Tour with that green jersey. I'm not quite sure of the points at the moment, but he was way ahead of Kittel. Kittel obviously has taken, I think, 5 points back, but his consistency is really coming through, and I don't think that we've seen the last of him yet in terms of stage wins.
Will he take the green jersey?
Quite possibly. Why not? I mean, the thing is, if Kittel now, he's quite a few points, it's around about 50 points or so behind, so I feel if Kittel can take another stage or two, obviously that's a lot of points. But if Démare is still getting seconds and thirds behind him, then he's only just bringing that. It's marginal. It's marginal.
Marginal gains. So let's have a look at the jerseys. Now, Chris Froome serenely wearing yellow today. The first time it was on his back. 45th day overall in his career, he's worn that yellow jersey. It was an easy day for him.
In his terms and in terms of the Tour overall, it was as straightforward as it gets. No problems. The overall situation hasn't changed at all. He's still 12 seconds ahead of Geraint Thomas and 14 clear of Fabio Aru in third place. You mentioned, OJ, that it's the 45th day that Chris Froome has had the yellow jersey on his back. Just to give you some idea of where Froome stands in the pantheon in Tour de France terms and how impressive his record is, only 3 riders have spent longer in the yellow jersey in the history of the race. Jacques Anquetil is among them. Miguel Indurain has spent 60 days, I think, in the yellow jersey, and Eddie Merckx, the incomparable Eddie Merckx, 111 days in the yellow jersey. But Froome's doing well at 45, and hopefully it'll be significantly more than that in a couple of weeks' time.
Because if he keeps the yellow jersey on his back all the way through to Paris, he will actually overtake Jacques Anquetil. Also, if he keeps the yellow jersey on his back all the way to Paris...
You're trying to test me today, aren't you?
Yeah, it'll be the first... Here we go. OK, let's ask you a question. It'll be the first time that a team has kept the yellow jersey from start to finish since when?
1970, and again we're back to Eddie Merckx. That's how long ago it was. Eddie Merckx's team, Famer, they had the yellow jersey on the backs of 2 riders throughout that Tour de France. It hasn't happened since then, but of course Sky are the only team to wear yellow so far, with Geraint Thomas and Chris Froome.
What was it like to commentate back then?
Yeah, very funny.
Well, let's actually hear from Chris Froome. He was speaking after the stage to Gemma Sturber.
So your 45th day in yellow, how would you sum that up?
Yeah, that's a pretty cool feeling. I mean, not many guys have been in this position before me, so it's certainly an honour to be up there with those guys. But pretty happy with the way things stand. Today was a nice relaxed day, as relaxed as they come on the Tour de France. Even in the heat, I mean, it was a day for the sprinters, and for the rest of us, it was just about staying out of trouble, staying up front, and waiting for the weekend, really, where we've got some more mountains ahead.
You spoke to Geraint about the novelty of wearing that jersey. When you see it in the morning on the back of the chair, do you still feel the same way, or are you a bit blasé about it now?
Yeah, I mean, I don't quite feel that same level of pressure and angst as I did before, but it's certainly, I mean, it's special. It's something really special as you climb off the bus in the morning, you see some yellow bar tape on your bike and just a few yellow bits and pieces here and there. It's special. I mean, it only really happens in the Tour de France, and being the biggest race, it's just it's an amazing feeling to be at the head of it.
The current yellow jersey wearer speaking to Gemma Sturber, our producer, who got so excited during this recording she decided to drop her mineral water. Indeed. That is the way. Exciting to be part of a bespoke when you're in a wine cellar here in the Champagne region. He just knows how to wear that yellow jersey now, doesn't he? He's not fazed by anything. He's got it on his back.
He's had plenty of practice.
Yeah, well, he has. He's had 45 days now.
He's good at defending. His team are good at defending. I wouldn't say he's unfazed. Certainly from the outside, he shows his strength, and he doesn't, dare I say it, doesn't wobble much. On the bike a little bit, but in the head, he's certainly strong. And I think it's difficult for other riders and other teams, and I know Dave Brailsford, that is his kind of outlook. It's always been like that from Team GB. It's kind of stamp your authority and almost beat them before they're even on the bike. You know, we used to turn up at the airport all kind of looking the same, as kind of like you're going into battle, and that is what they do. So it must be very difficult and often frustrating for other riders from other teams and sport directors to see how they go about their business and think, right, how are we going to do this? How are we going to take the jersey off them? It's difficult, and they could very well take it, but, you know, touch wood, but you just never know. Aru is only 14 seconds behind. I don't think his team are as strong. Will they need to be this year? I'm not so sure, but certainly Aru is right up there now as one of the guys. We knew he was coming in as a potential favourite, but certainly after yesterday's stage, it's kind of right. We can't, you know, the team's outlook is we cannot allow him an inch, because if we give him an inch, he will take a mile.
And he's going to have to hope that Jakob Fuglsang is prepared to pull for him, and that Luksenko can also stay strong. He was in the white jersey of leading that competition.
Yeah, Fuglsang, he lost a little bit of time yesterday.
Rob,
around a minute.
We're in Europe, by the way, so if he gets off at a centimetre, he'll take a kilometre.
Sorry, yes, he will.
Please.
He will take a lot.
So nothing changed in the top 10 after stage 6. Chris Froome still first, Geraint Thomas second, Fabio Ruiz, you mentioned, third, Daniel Martin and Richie Porte both in fourth and fifth, 25 and 39 seconds down respectively. Just a quick chat now about the weather. Very hot today, very sticky. As you said, Rob, the roads are difficult to ride on.
Grippy, yes, very grippy. And when you know, not so much on the flat, but when you're going up a bit of a gradient, when the tar's melting, you can just hear the gravel and the grit sticking to your tyre and flicking up, and it's almost like someone just holding onto you and pulling you back. It's like the handbrake's on the car, and it can be hard, mentally difficult, you know, in the heat, and you're just constantly, today and tomorrow will be the same, just on this treadmill. You know, sometimes you prefer it with a few climbs, and then you've got quite a few kilometres of riding where you are literally freewheeling, and you can change your body style, you can change the muscles that you use when you get out of the saddle. But on roads like this, it's just and it was a constant cross headwind pretty much today. We were sat in commentary hoping that the wind was going to pick up a little bit, because had it done so on the big open roads,
it was a bit mean of us, I know.
Yeah, well, great to watch, not so nice to ride in, but it could have created havoc, and it just means that teams get up the front, they get organised, they stick it in the gutter, allowing or not allowing protection for the riders behind, and that's where you get all the echelons, and you find that the race just splits up. Alas, it didn't happen.
You're right, though. The weather is a factor, and some riders clearly go well when it's very hot. Some have a problem with it. Some suffer more from allergies. Some don't like the heat. I think perhaps an even bigger problem is when the weather is very changeable. If you have really hot weather for a few days, and then suddenly, for example, if they go in the mountains and it suddenly becomes very cold and it's pouring with rain, weather that changes a lot can cause real problems for the riders' bodies, and that's when some of them start to get ill.
And they do, and I think that's one of the reasons why a lot of riders try and opt out of the Giro, for instance, because
it can be didn't happen. It can be cold.
Didn't happen this year, but it passes.
Tomorrow, stage 7, more of the same.
Well, wine lovers' delight, by the way, starting in Champagne country and finishing in Burgundy. So it's basically a straight line down to Neuilly-Saint-Georges. No major obstacles en route, no hills worthy of the name for the riders. Straight road, and they do a little lap around some vineyards before they get into Neuilly-Saint-Georges.
Stop off, take a glass, have a baguette.
Yeah.
It's easy being a bike rider, isn't it? A quick prediction for tomorrow's stage. Who takes it, do you think, having had a very brief look at it?
Damar.
Do you think Damar tomorrow?
Yeah, only because there's a little bit of a ramp. It's not a climb, but it's just a little bit of a ramp on the run-in, and I think that the way Kittel performed the other day when it was similar, he was out of it, which is one of the reasons why he's a little bit behind in points on Damar, even though he's had 2 wins. But yeah, I'll go Damar.
I can't argue with that.
Especially for the French media. Because
it's great.
They went very quiet when Arnaud Damar was beaten on the line today by Marcel Kittel. They went very quiet.
Well, I'm sure they were, but hey, he got himself on the podium because he's still in the green, and it just means that if he does win, obviously he'll extend his lead in that, which we don't necessarily want in terms of a spectacle, because we want it to be nice and tight, as we do as it stands with the yellow jersey. It's still compact. We're all kind of popping the champagne corks, dare we say, already. It's too early.
They'll be desperate for him to win because Sagan and Cavendish stole his thunder when he won the stage the other day.
Sports with Sean Caravilles. Caravilles.